When we talk about processes in operations management, we talk about the, the structure or the way, the steps that we go through to deliver either a good or a service to a customer. And in a previous video, I talked about sort of the high level concepts around around processes generally for operations, and you know, talked about process focus versus product focus. And I thought I would just spend, you know, 10 minutes or so talking about service processes and how service processes are a little bit different because customers are active in that process. When we're delivering a service, customers are there and we don't always have control over how that works. So we think about a couple of things a little bit differently. So I thought I'd spend a couple of minutes reviewing what those are. There's a concept called service blueprinting, which really focuses on the customer and the provider interaction. So it doesn't detail every step, but it focuses on that interaction between the provider and the customer. And it defines three levels of interaction. Each level has different management issues. And what it does is it allows us to identify where things can go wrong. So it allows us to identify where there are potential flaws in the process. So this is a garage and car service, and you'll remember the concept of a polka yoke or a foolproof to make sure nothing goes wrong. But so we have sort of the steps here. We have level one where the customer is in control. We have level two where the customer is still interacting with the service provider, and we have level three where service is removed from a customer's control and interaction. So in that circumstance, in a car, in a service facility for a car, you can be in level three because the car goes into the garage and you don't see what they're doing, and you don't have no longer have input. But for example, if you were going to the dentist, level three does not exist because they don't take anything. I mean, you are there getting dental service, so there is no time at which you aren't there. So if you look here, then it documents customer arrives for service. The pokey yoke is we have a bell in the driveway in case customer arrival goes unnoticed. So they drive across the driveway and there's a bell. So there is no point at which we don't know the customer is there waiting for service. So again, we've built in something that removes the risk of missing it. Say hello, figure out what they want. If it's standard, yes, we get them to the waiting area. If the customer remains in the work area, offer coffee and reading material in the waiting room. So we want that person in the waiting room where they're more comfortable. It goes down, we perform the service, we make sure we've done everything. There's a checklist. We have other service review the invoice for accuracy, and then it goes back. We say your car is ready. The customer approves the invoice so there's no surprises. The customer takes a look at the car to be sure that they're getting what they want. They pay and they leave. If it's not a standard, like an oil change or something standard, look at the specifics. You have a decision point here. Is this something that you can do? And does the customer approve you doing it? If no, tell them where they might get something that they want and they leave. If yes, tell the customer what to expect, how long it's going to take, much it's going to cost. Then they go to the waiting area. There should probably be a line here again through this pokey yoke and then up to the waiting room. Excuse me. You do the work, prepare the invoice, you check it, and again. So we've got the three levels, the degree of interaction, and we have to think about how we interact with that client and the degree to which that customer is going to have an influence on the process. So that's essentially the service blueprint is different because of these levels. This is essentially a flow chart, but broken into these levels of customer interaction, so we can think about how we are going to interact with that customer in a way that keeps them happy and allows us to effectively deliver that service. As I talked about in the last video, we can do flow charts, which provide just a flow, time function mapping, which I reviewed in the last one, which not only does flow, but also talks about how long everything is going to take so that we can assess whether that's reasonable. Value stream analysis extends to customers and suppliers, so a little bit more of that blueprinting. Process charts show detail, and the service blueprint focuses on customer interaction. So it's very much similar in terms of approach to product processes, but in this case we have to include the customer interaction and think about how they are going to interact throughout that process with us as we're delivering that. So that's the change in that one. So there are some things that we need to think about that are specific to service process design. We absolutely can't get away with no interaction with the customer. At the very least, we have to understand what they're looking for. And this can often affect performance adversely. Customers are unpredictable. They have different expectations. We have to build it in, and we have to understand that could delay. We've all been behind that person in the line at the grocery store that has 17 coupons, and there's absolutely nothing the store can do about the fact that I'm stuck behind that person. So we have to build that in, and we have to understand it, and we have to account for it. The better these interactions are accommodated in the process design, the more efficient and effective the process. So the degree to which we can manage the customer's participation in that service process affects the efficiency and, frankly, the effectiveness, not just for that customer, but for other customers as well. So understanding what may happen and how that may happen and what customers may do allows us to design explicitly into the process steps to minimize the disruption. And it's also important to find the right combination of cost and customer interaction. In some cases, it's much more efficient not to have the customer, unless it's dental work like we talked about earlier, not to have the customer present because they're always looking over your shoulder. But in some cases, there's real value in customer interaction, in customers seeing and experiencing that process. And so what we do is we balance that in terms of what's getting us to both the price point and the customer satisfaction that we think is important here. When we talked about products, we talked about degree of customization and sort of product focus or process focus, and this is similar here. So we have degree of customization, we have low, high customization. Remember, high customization, we had sort of more process focused, and low customizations, we had more product focused. And then on this axis, we have degree of labor, or sort of the amount of labor input we need to put into this service. And so it's similar but not identical to what we talked about before. So let's look at here. Orthodontics are clearly highly customized. The specific work you need depends on the specific conditions of your teeth. And so you have a sort of, you go into the orthodontist, they assess your need, and they install the orthodontics that you need. In the case of digitized, where you might just send in an x-ray or an impression from your dentist, and they will send out a series of inserts that you will use yourself, clearly still highly customized, but that's not happening. The customer isn't there, the patient isn't there when you're doing it, and so it requires a little bit less labor. Again, general purpose law firms, customized, although there's still probably some, it's not quite as customized as orthodontics. You do a will, there's some standard boilerplate elements. Law clinics will have even less customization. Commercial banking, you're either at the ATM or private banking where you're getting much more customized service. Retailing versus warehouse or catalog stores. Again, less labor, less sort of individualization for you. And you can see the other ones, fine dining restaurants, fast food restaurants. So the degree of customization, mass service versus service shop. So this is product focus up here. This is process focused, where an individual client may have a different set of needs. Each individual client will have a different set of needs. So we've talked about some of the challenges of service provision and what some of the issues we might run into are. How can we build sort of provisions into our service blueprint and our service provision that allow us to improve the productivity of that service? And one strategy is separation, where we structure the service so customers must go to where the service is offered. So we have, bank customers go to a manager to open a new account, to a loan officer for loans, and to tellers for deposits, or to an ATM for a deposit or a withdrawal, and to a teller if they need cash or for an exchange. So that we then have individual service providers, like a process focused, and the customer goes to the individual place that they want. Now, if many of you may not go into banks anymore, we do it all at the ATM, that's fine, but if you need a loan, you have to go in. Because my wife's business deals with the bank, and we have savings at the bank and investments at the bank, we don't have to do this separation. We can go to one person who will do that all for us. So again, cost is higher, but and so less, and it's less productive, but they do that for high value clients. Another thing you can do is self-service. Productivity, you lower the amount of labor hours you're doing, self-checkouts and those sorts of things, where you're removing some of that customer interaction. And in some cases, that doesn't just improve the productivity, it improves the experience. I don't know if you've ever gone to the grocery store and had one of those people who, looks the other is talking to the person that the next person hardly acknowledges your existence and is talking to them about how much their job sucks and how unhappy they are. That's not improving your experience. You might well be happier at the self-service kiosk where you don't have to do it. So there are a variety of things that you can consider there. Postponement, which is the concept of postponement, is where you don't do the final assembly or the final decision, you customize it at the end. And postponement can happen in products too. For example, some clothing manufacturers won't do the final dyeing or coloring of items until they see which colors are going to be most popular. So they will assemble shirts or pants or something, and then have in the warehouse where they customize it at the end when they know the relative demand of relative colors. So that's postponement. But you can also do that with service delivery, so that you are doing the specialized things at the last minute in order to not have the delays in the process. Focus, restrict the offerings, limited menu restaurants. You limit the menu, it goes more quickly. We're seeing a lot of that in COVID, which not only because of ease of interaction with customers, it's quicker to do pickup, some things pick up better than others, but also because of space in the back. So that's something that can be valuable. Modular selection of service, again, we talked about that. Investment and insurance selection, prepackaged food modules in restaurants so that you can go to the specific things that you need. Automation, obviously, the degree to which we can automate some services. ATMs at the bank, as an example, means that the customer in that circumstance is providing more of the work, and we can then provide service more effectively and productively. Scheduling, so that we don't have people coming in randomly, as we talked about in queuing theory. We have people coming in at a specific time so that we know that we will be, that our capacity will get used and we won't have people waiting, and then we won't have, so if we schedule people, it becomes relatively consistent arrivals, and so we can then, that allows us, frankly, to flatten demand and have higher rates of utilization and higher productivity rates. And we can train both our staff and, frankly, our customers to understand how we can do this process more effectively. So, as we wrap up here, improving service processes is thinking about the layout, product exposure, customer education, product enhancement, how people flow through the servicescape. We can do better training, better recruiting, and we can think about flexibility. People who can do several different services help us to improve productivity, but also improve customer satisfaction. So that just very quickly, in about 15 minutes, highlights sort of some of the things that are unique to service delivery and thinking about service processes. We will, that builds on to the previous one that introduced processes and leads into consideration of capacity and other ways to improve the efficiency of processes. So, have a great day.